When an obese Karen publicly humiliates Judge Judy on national television, claiming the legendary judge has been making illegal rulings for years, the courtroom erupts in chaos. But what Judge Judy reveals next about Karen's dark secret sends shockwaves through everyone watching. This isn't just another courtroom drama. This is the moment an entitled woman's entire world comes crashing down in front of millions, and what Judge Judy exposes will leave you absolutely speechless. The studio audience was packed beyond capacity that Tuesday afternoon. People had lined up since dawn hoping to witness Judge Judy's no-nonsense justice in person. Cameras rolled as the bailiff called the next case, a simple parking dispute that should have taken 10 minutes. But when Karen walked through those courtroom doors, everything changed. She wasn't just big. She was massive, struggling to fit through the aisle between the gallery seats. But it wasn't her size that caught everyone's attention. It was the smirk on her face, the kind of expression that screamed entitlement and misplaced confidence. She wore a stained floral blouse that barely contained her, and her arms were crossed defiantly as she approached the plaintiff's stand. Judge Judy looked up from her notes, her sharp eyes immediately sizing up the situation with the precision of someone who had seen thousands of cases. The defendant, a small elderly man named Mr. Chin, stood nervously on the other side. He had supposedly blocked Karen's car in a grocery store parking lot for 3 minutes. 3 minutes. That's what this case was about. But Karen had sued him for emotional distress, lost wages and punitive damages totaling $15,000. The audience murmured at the absurdity. Judge Judy raised one eyebrow, a gesture her regular viewers knew meant she was already unimpressed. She began reading the case summary aloud, her voice dripping with skepticism. Karen interrupted her. Not once but twice. The second time, Judge Judy's head snapped up like a predator spotting prey. The courtroom went silent. You could hear people shifting uncomfortably in their seats, knowing that interrupting Judge Judy was like poking a sleeping lion. But then Karen did something that shocked everyone. She laughed. A loud, condescending laugh that echoed through the studio. With one hand on her hip and the other pointing directly at Judge Judy, she said the words that would change everything. You know, Judge Judy, if you actually knew the law like I do, you'd realize you've been making illegal rulings for years. I've studied every episode. I know what I'm talking about. The courtroom gasped collectively. Several audience members covered their mouths in disbelief. Even the cameraman exchanged wide-eyed glances. Mr. Chin looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. But Judge Judy? She didn't move. She didn't blink. She just stared at Karen with the intensity of 1,000 suns, her hands folded calmly on the bench before her. Karen, emboldened by what she mistook for silence as weakness, continued her rant. I've been telling people online for years that your show is entertainment, not real law. You cut corners. You ignore proper procedure. Honestly, someone should investigate you. The audience was no longer gasping. They were frozen in a mixture of horror and anticipation. This woman had just accused Judge Judy, a former prosecutor and family court judge with decades of experience, of being a fraud. On her own show. In her own courtroom. The audacity was breathtaking. Judge Judy slowly removed her glasses, folded them with deliberate precision and placed them on the bench. Those who knew her recognized this as the calm before an absolute storm. She leaned forward slightly, her voice quiet but carrying the weight of impending destruction. Within minutes of filming, someone in the audience live tweeted what was happening. Karen just accused Judge Judy of being a fake judge. This is insane. The tweet exploded. Entertainment news sites picked it up immediately. Obese Karen challenges Judge Judy's credentials on live TV, read one headline. Court show fan tries to school the judge, read another. By the time the commercial break hit, the clip was already being shared thousands of times across Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Reaction videos started popping up within the hour. Legal professionals were stunned. Regular viewers were outraged. But everyone, and I mean everyone, wanted to see what would happen next. They had no idea that Judge Judy had already discovered something about Karen that would turn this entire situation into a national scandal. Back in the courtroom, during the commercial break, Judge Judy's producer rushed to her chambers with a tablet. Your Honor, you need to see this. Judge Judy looked at the screen, and for the first time that day, a slow smile spread across her face. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who had just been handed a royal flush in a poker game. She looked up at her producer and said calmly, "Bring me everything you can find on her." And I mean everything. Her staff scrambled. Phone calls were made. Background checks were run at lightning speed. What they discovered in those 15 minutes would not only destroy Karen's credibility but potentially land her in legal trouble that would follow her for years. Judge Judy returned to the bench with a manila folder that hadn't been there before. Karen, still smug and oblivious, thought she had won some kind of moral victory during the break. As the camera started rolling again, Judge Judy didn't immediately address Karen's accusations. Instead, she turned to Mr. Chen with unexpected gentleness. "Sir, did you block this woman's car intentionally?" "No, Your Honor," the elderly man replied softly, his accent thick with nervousness. "I was loading groceries for my wife. She has cancer. I was only there for maybe 2-3 minutes." Judge Judy nodded sympathetically, then slowly turned her gaze to Karen. "And you," she began, her voice taking on a razor-sharp edge, "felt that a sick woman's husband taking 3 minutes to load groceries warranted a $15,000 lawsuit for emotional distress?" Karen puffed up defensively. "I have rights. I have places to be. My time is valuable." Judge Judy's expression could have cut through steel. "Your time is valuable? Let's talk about how you spend your valuable time, shall we?" That's when Judge Judy opened the manila folder, and Karen's face began to change. The smugness started to crack. Her eyes darted to the folder, then back to Judge Judy's face, searching for a hint of what was coming. She found none. Judge Judy pulled out a stack of printed pages and held them up for the cameras to see. "These are screenshots from your Facebook group," she said, her voice calm but loaded with accusation. "A group where you charge vulnerable people $50 for legal advice." Karen's mouth opened but no sound came out. The courtroom was so silent you could hear the hum of the overhead lights. Judge Judy continued, flipping through pages with theatrical precision. "Here's one where you told a domestic violence victim she couldn't get a restraining order because her husband hadn't hit her yet. She had to wait for the first punch. Is that your legal expertise?" Karen's face went from pale to bright red. "Your Honor, I was just trying to help." Judge Judy's voice rose for the first time. "Help? You gave dangerous, incorrect legal advice to someone whose life was in danger." She did wait, and when he finally hit her, he broke her jaw. The courtroom erupted in shocked murmurs. Judge Judy slammed her gavel once. "Order." The room fell silent again instantly. But Judge Judy wasn't done. Not even close. She held up another printout. "Here's another gem. You told a man he could fire his employee for being gay because that's just free speech." Karen tried to interject. "I didn't mean it like that." "Stop talking," Judge Judy commanded with such authority that Karen's mouth snapped shut mid-sentence. "You charged him $50 for advice that could have resulted in a discrimination lawsuit that would have bankrupted him. Luckily, he had the sense to consult a real attorney who told him you were completely wrong." The audience was no longer trying to suppress their reactions. People were shaking their heads in disgust. One woman in the front row had tears in her eyes, clearly identifying with one of the victims of Karen's terrible advice. Judge Judy leaned back in her chair, her eyes never leaving Karen's now trembling form. "So let me get this straight. You, with zero legal education, zero credentials, and apparently zero common sense, have been charging people for legal advice while simultaneously criticizing me, a graduate of New York Law School who served as a prosecutor and family court judge for over 20 years? The contrast was devastating. Karen looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. But Judge Judy had saved the worst revelation for last. She pulled out one final document and held it up. "This is a complaint filed with the California State Bar 2 weeks ago. Someone you gave advice to not only lost their case but is now facing additional legal penalties because they followed your guidance. They've filed a formal complaint against you for unauthorized practice of law." Karen's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of panic and self-pity. Judge Judy's voice dropped to a deadly calm. "You came into my courtroom on my show, and had the audacity to question my legal knowledge while you've been running an illegal operation scamming desperate people out of their money and potentially ruining their lives." The weight of those words hung in the air like a guillotine blade waiting to drop. Every person watching, whether in the courtroom or soon to be watching at home, knew they were witnessing something extraordinary. This wasn't just a case anymore. This was a reckoning. "If she wants attention," Judge Judy said, her voice barely above a whisper but somehow filling the entire room, "she'll have it. From me, from the State Bar, and from every person she's ever misled." The storm hadn't just begun. It had arrived with the force of a Category 5 hurricane, and Karen was standing directly in its path with nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. The cameras captured every moment of her face crumbling, her confidence dissolving, her entire world tilting on its axis. And America was about to watch every second of her complete and total destruction. Within hours of the episode airing, Karen's courtroom meltdown became the #1 trending topic worldwide. Every major news outlet from CNN to Fox News ran the clip on repeat. Entertainment Tonight called it the most dramatic Judge Judy moment in television history. Social media absolutely exploded. Twitter was flooded with hashtags like Judge Judy destroys Karen and Don't Mess with Judy. TikTok creators made thousands of reaction videos, their faces showing pure shock and satisfaction as they watched Karen's smugness evaporate in real time. Legal professionals on LinkedIn were celebrating. Finally, someone with a platform is calling out these fake legal experts, wrote one attorney with over 50,000 followers. YouTube legal channels that normally got modest views were suddenly pulling millions of clicks by breaking down everything Judge Judy had exposed. But inside a small apartment across town, Karen sat frozen on her couch, her phone buzzing non-stop with notifications she was too terrified to read. Her Facebook legal advice group, which had over 12,000 members that morning, was being flooded with angry messages. People she had charged $50 were now demanding refunds. Others were posting screenshots of the terrible advice she had given them, advice that had cost them jobs, custody battles, and court cases. "I trusted you and you ruined my life," one woman commented with crying emojis. Her phone rang. It was her sister. Karen answered with a shaking hand. "What were you thinking?" Her sister screamed through the phone. "You're all over the news. Mom is crying. Everyone at my job has seen the video." Karen tried to explain, tried to defend herself, but her sister hung up before she could finish a sentence. She looked at her laptop where her Venmo account was open. In the past 6 months alone, she had collected over $18,000 from people seeking her legal expertise. Money she now realized she might have to pay back, or worse, money that could be used as evidence against her in court. Meanwhile, Judge Judy was in her private chambers, reviewing additional files her team had compiled. Her producer entered nervously with more news. "Your Honor, the California State Bar has confirmed they're opening a full investigation. They want to interview you." Judge Judy nodded without looking up from the documents. "Good. She needs to face real consequences." Her bailiff Petrie leaned against the doorframe. "That was the most intense case I've seen in 20 years of working with you." Judge Judy finally looked up, her expression serious. "That woman has been playing with people's lives like they're toys. Desperate people, vulnerable people, people who couldn't afford real lawyers so they turned to her. And she took their money knowing she had no idea what she was talking about. This isn't about being mean to her. This is about protecting the people she's hurt and will hurt if someone doesn't stop her." Petrie nodded in agreement. "The internet is going absolutely insane. You're a hero today." But Judge Judy waved her hand dismissively. "I'm not a hero. I'm just doing what should have been done years ago." Back at Karen's apartment, she finally worked up the courage to look at social media. What she saw made her physically ill. Her face was everywhere. Memes, screenshots, reaction videos, news articles, think pieces about the danger of fake experts. Someone had even created a website called karensfakelegaladvice.com that cataloged all her worst takes with corrections from actual lawyers. She read comment after comment. This woman should be in jail. She destroyed families with her stupidity. Judge Judy is a national treasure for exposing this fraud. Karen closed her laptop and burst into tears, not from remorse for the people she had hurt, but from the crushing realization that her comfortable little scam had just been obliterated on national television. And the worst part? Judge Judy had promised this was only the beginning. By the next morning, Karen's destruction had evolved from entertainment news into a serious legal story. Good Morning America opened their show with the segment. This morning, a viral courtroom moment has sparked a national conversation about fake legal experts preying on vulnerable Americans. They played the full clip of Judge Judy's takedown, and legal analyst Dan Abrams appeared via satellite. "This is a huge problem," he explained to the hosts. "There are thousands of people online right now giving legal advice with zero qualifications, and they're charging money for it. What Judge Judy exposed isn't just one woman's fraud. It's a symptom of a much bigger issue." The hosts nodded gravely as they displayed Karen's Facebook group on screen, her face blurred but her scam fully visible. Meanwhile, the California State Bar issued an official statement that sent shockwaves through Karen's world. "We take unauthorized practice of law extremely seriously. Based on the evidence presented, we are pursuing an active investigation that could result in criminal charges and civil penalties." Karen read those words on her phone while sitting in her car outside a Walmart, too afraid to go home where reporters had started showing up. Criminal charges. The words echoed in her mind like a death sentence. She had thought she was just giving friendly advice, making some side money. She never imagined it could land her in actual legal trouble. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through her bank account. $18,000. Money she had already spent on furniture, vacations, and restaurant meals. Money she might now have to repay while also hiring a real lawyer to defend her. Social media had moved beyond just mocking Karen. Now people were sharing their own stories of being scammed by fake legal experts. One woman posted a tearful video. "I paid someone like Karen $300 to help me with my custody case. I lost my kids because the advice was completely wrong." Her video got 2 million views in 6 hours. Another man shared, "A fake legal consultant told me I didn't need a lawyer for my DUI. I'm now serving 18 months because I followed that advice." The hashtag fake legal advice started trending with thousands of horror stories. Suddenly, Karen wasn't just one villain. She represented an entire predatory industry that had been operating in the shadows of social media. Judge Judy's team was inundated with interview requests. Every major network wanted her to comment. That afternoon, she appeared on a special segment of 60 Minutes that had been fast-tracked due to public demand. Leslie Stahl sat across from her in the iconic interview setting. "Judge Judy, your confrontation with that woman has sparked a national movement. What made you decide to expose her so publicly?" Judge Judy's answer was measured and powerful. "Because silence is complicity. I have a platform, and if I don't use it to protect people from predators like her, then what's the point? Every day, vulnerable people are being exploited by con artists pretending to have expertise they don't possess." This woman charged a domestic violence victim for advice that could have gotten her killed. That's not just wrong. That's evil. The interview clip went viral immediately. Judge Judy's passionate defense of victims resonated with millions. Comments poured in. "This is why we love her. She uses her power for good. She's not just entertainment, she's a force for justice." Meanwhile, Karen watched the interview from her car, tears streaming down her face as she realized the entire country now saw her as Judge Judy had described, not as someone trying to help, but as a predator. Her phone rang again. This time it was a number she didn't recognize. She answered hesitantly. "Is this Karen whoever?" A male voice asked. "This is Detective Martinez with the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office. We need you to come in for questioning regarding charges of unauthorized practice of law and fraud." Karen's world went completely black. The following week, Judge Judy appeared on a live special episode dedicated entirely to the Karen case. The studio had never been more packed. People lined up for 12 hours just to get a seat. This wasn't just another court show taping. This was history. The network promoted it relentlessly. Judge Judy addresses the viral takedown and what happens next. When the cameras went live, Judge Judy sat behind her bench with that same unwavering confidence that had made her a legend for decades. But tonight she wasn't there to judge a case. She was there to educate America about something far more important. "Let me be very clear about something," she began, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "What you witnessed last week wasn't me being cruel to an overweight woman. It wasn't me being mean for ratings. What you saw was me protecting the people that woman has victimized and will continue to victimize if someone doesn't stop her." The audience erupted in applause, but Judge Judy raised her hand for silence. "Since that episode aired, my office has been contacted by over 300 people who paid Karen for legal advice. 300. And every single one of them was given information that was either completely wrong or dangerously misleading." She pulled out a stack of letters and held them up. "This is from a mother who lost custody of her children because Karen told her she didn't need a lawyer for her hearing. This is from a man who is now facing deportation because Karen told him his visa application was fine when it wasn't. This is from a woman whose abusive husband found her at a shelter because Karen told her restraining orders were too expensive and she should just move instead." With each letter, Judge Judy's voice grew stronger, more passionate. The camera zoomed in on audience members wiping tears from their eyes. These aren't just mistakes. These are lives destroyed by someone who thought watching TV made her qualified to practice law. Then Judge Judy did something unprecedented. She invited 3 of Karen's victims onto the stage. A young mother named Jessica stood first, her voice shaking. "I paid Karen $50 because I couldn't afford a real lawyer. She told me I had a strong case for custody. I believed her. I lost my daughter for 2 years because of her advice. My little girl thought I abandoned her." The audience gasped, several people openly crying now. Next was Marcus, a construction worker who had trusted Karen with his workers' compensation case. "She said I didn't need to file certain paperwork. I lost my benefits. I lost my apartment. I was homeless for 8 months. His voice cracked with emotion. Finally, an elderly woman named Dorothy spoke. "My husband died and left me his pension. Karen told me I didn't need to probate his will. The state took everything. I'm 72 years old and I lost my home. Judge Judy stood from her bench, something she rarely did, and walked over to embrace each victim. The gesture was so powerful, so human, that even the camera operators were visibly moved. She turned back to the camera, her eyes blazing with righteous anger. Karen is not a victim. These people are victims. And there are thousands more like them across this country being scammed by people with internet connections and no conscience. She paused, letting her words sink in. Then she dropped the biggest bombshell of the night. I'm announcing today the creation of the Judge Judy Legal Protection Fund. We're partnering with legitimate legal aid organizations to help people who've been victimized by fake legal consultants. And we will prosecute these frauds to the fullest extent of the law. The studio erupted in a standing ovation that lasted over 2 minutes. Social media exploded once again. Judge Judy isn't just calling out the problem, she's fixing it. This is legendary. News outlets scrambled to cover this new development. Within hours, donations poured into the fund. $20,000. $50,000. By midnight, over $2 million had been raised. Meanwhile, in her apartment, Karen watched the special alone, her lawyer having advised her not to appear. She saw the victims. She heard their stories. And for the first time she understood the true weight of what she had done. But understanding came too late. The legal hammer was about to fall. 3 days after Judge Judy's special, Karen received the official notice. The California State Bar, in cooperation with the District Attorney's Office, was filing formal charges. 6 counts of unauthorized practice of law, 12 counts of fraud, and multiple civil suits from victims seeking restitution. Karen sat in a real lawyer's office, a public defender who looked at her case files with barely concealed disgust. Ma'am, I have to be honest with you. This is bad. Really bad. You could be facing up to 5 years in prison and fines exceeding $500,000. Karen's face went pale. I don't have that kind of money. Her lawyer sighed. Then you'll be paying it off for the rest of your life. Meanwhile, the internet had transformed Karen into a cautionary tale that would live forever. Reddit communities dedicated entire threads to documenting every piece of bad advice she had ever given. One thread titled Karen's Legal Advice Hall of Shame had over 50,000 upvotes and was filled with screenshots of her most dangerous recommendations. People magazine ran a cover story titled The Dark Side of Social Media Experts featuring Karen's mugshot alongside other notorious online scammers. Her face became synonymous with fake expertise. Business schools started using her case as an example of what happens when confidence exceeds competence. Psychology professors analyzed her behavior in lectures about the Dunning-Kruger effect. Karen's personal life completely collapsed. Her landlord evicted her after reporters constantly showed up at the building. Her family stopped taking her calls after relatives were harassed at work and school. I have a cousin named Karen and kids are bullying her because of you, one family member texted before blocking her number. Her few remaining friends abandoned her when they realized associating with her meant becoming social pariahs themselves. She had to delete all social media accounts after receiving thousands of death threats daily. Someone created a fake Yelp page for her legal services with 1-star reviews. Would give 0 stars if possible. This woman destroyed my family. She tried to get a regular job at a grocery store, but the manager recognized her from TV and told her they couldn't hire someone with pending criminal charges. The victims Karen had hurt began organizing. Jessica, Marcus, and Dorothy from Judge Judy's special formed a support group that grew to over 200 members. They called themselves Survivors of Fake Legal Advice, and they became advocates for stronger regulations against unauthorized practice of law. They appeared on morning shows, gave interviews to newspapers, and testified before state legislatures. Jessica spoke at a California Senate hearing, her voice steady and strong. My daughter asked me why I left her. She was 5 years old and thought her mommy didn't love her anymore. All because I trusted someone who had no right giving legal advice. I'm here to make sure this never happens to another family. Their advocacy worked. Within 2 months, California passed the strongest anti-fraud legal consulting laws in the nation. Other states began drafting similar legislation. Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok implemented new policies banning accounts that offered legal advice without proper credentials. The platforms started requiring verification for anyone claiming legal expertise. Thousands of fake consultant accounts were shut down overnight. Karen had inadvertently sparked a nationwide crackdown on the very scam she had been running. Her lawyer called her with an update. The DA is offering a plea deal. Plead guilty to all charges, serve 18 months in county jail, 5 years probation, and pay full restitution to your victims. It's the best offer you're going to get. Karen sat in her tiny studio apartment, the only place she could afford now, and realized she had no choice. She had gone from feeling powerful and important to facing prison time, bankruptcy, and a criminal record. All because she thought watching Judge Judy episodes made her qualified to practice law. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. That night, she signed the plea agreement with shaking hands. The next morning, news outlets reported. Viral Karen accepts plea deal in fake legal advice case. Judge Judy's takedown leads to criminal conviction. The comment sections were merciless. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. She deserves every second of jail time. Judge Judy changed this woman's entire life in 10 minutes. Karen packed a small bag for county jail, knowing that when she got out, her life as she knew it would be over forever. 6 months after the viral confrontation, Judge Judy stood at a podium in Washington, D.C. before a packed congressional hearing on consumer protection. Legislators from both parties had invited her to testify about the growing problem of unlicensed legal consultants preying on vulnerable Americans. She wore a navy blue suit, her signature no-nonsense expression firmly in place as cameras from every major network captured the moment. Members of Congress, she began, her voice commanding immediate attention. What happened in my courtroom was not an isolated incident. It was a wake-up call. Millions of Americans are being exploited by online scammers pretending to have expertise they do not possess, and it's happening in every state, every city, every community. She presented data that her legal team had compiled. In the past year alone, an estimated 10 million Americans sought legal advice from unqualified online sources. Many paid for it. Most suffered consequences. And the platforms enabling this fraud have done virtually nothing to stop it. Senator after senator nodded in agreement. One senator from Texas spoke up. Judge Judy, your actions likely saved countless people from becoming victims. Have you heard from any of them? Judy's expression softened slightly. Every single day. We receive hundreds of letters at my office from people thanking us for exposing this issue. But more importantly, we hear from people who were about to hire someone like Karen but didn't because they saw what happened. That's prevention. That's impact. The hearing lasted 3 hours and resulted in bipartisan legislation dubbed the Judge Judy Act, a nickname that stuck despite official attempts to call it something more formal. The law mandated strict penalties for unauthorized legal practice, required social media platforms to verify credentials for anyone offering professional advice, and created a federal task force to investigate and prosecute fake consultants. When the bill passed unanimously in both chambers, Judge Judy was invited to the White House for the signing ceremony. The president shook her hand and said with a smile, "You did more in 10 minutes on TV than we've been trying to do for years. Thank you for your service to this country." The photo of that handshake became iconic, shared millions of times with captions like, "From courtroom to Congress, Judge Judy is a national treasure." Back at her show, ratings had never been higher. The Karen episode became the most watched court show episode in television history with over 40 million viewers. Networks offered Judge Judy massive contract extensions. Universities invited her to speak at law school graduations. Harvard Law School gave her an honorary doctorate and asked her to deliver the commencement address. Standing before hundreds of graduating lawyers, she gave advice that would be quoted for years. "You are about to enter a profession that carries immense responsibility. People will trust you with their freedom, their families, their futures. Never forget that with great knowledge comes great duty. And if you ever encounter someone practicing law without a license, you have an obligation to stop them. Not for your profession but for their victims." The legal community embraced Judge Judy like never before. Bar associations across the country created awards in her name for attorneys who provided pro bono services to victims of legal fraud. Law schools added her congressional testimony to their ethics curricula. Young lawyers cited her as an inspiration. But perhaps the most touching moment came when Jessica, the young mother who had lost custody because of Karen's advice, appeared on Judge Judy's show with an update. She had regained full custody of her daughter, finished her GED, and was now enrolled in community college studying paralegal services. "I want to help people the right way," she told Judge Judy through tears of joy. "You showed me that standing up for what's right matters." Judge Judy hugged her tightly, and even the tough judge's eyes glistened with emotion. Meanwhile, Karen sat in county jail, her 18-month sentence feeling like an eternity. Other inmates recognized her from TV and gave her a wide berth. Even criminals don't respect scammers who hurt families. She spent her days working in the prison library, processing legal documents under the supervision of actual paralegals, finally learning what real legal work actually looked like. At night, she wrote letters of apology to her victims, though most went unanswered. The few responses she did receive were devastating. "Your apology means nothing. You destroyed years of my life for $50. One victim wrote, "I hope you understand the pain you caused." Karen did understand now, but understanding couldn't undo the damage. 18 months later, Karen walked out of county jail into a world that had completely moved on without her. She was 42 years old, broke, and branded with a criminal record that would follow her forever. Her court-ordered restitution totaled $370,000, an amount she would spend the rest of her life paying back in monthly installments. She got a job washing dishes at a chain restaurant, the only place willing to hire her. Her manager, a kind woman in her 50s, knew exactly who she was but believed in second chances. "You keep your head down, work hard, and maybe rebuild some kind of life." Karen nodded silently, grateful for even this small mercy. She lived in a tiny room she rented week to week, took the bus everywhere, and spent her evenings attending court-mandated classes on legal ethics, a cruel irony that wasn't lost on her. Meanwhile, Judge Judy's legacy continued to grow in ways no one had anticipated. The legal protection fund she created had helped over 5,000 victims of fake legal consultants recover damages and get proper representation. Law schools reported a significant increase in students interested in consumer protection law, citing Judge Judy's advocacy as inspiration. Social media platforms had shut down over 15,000 fake legal advice accounts, and criminal prosecutions of unauthorized practitioners had tripled nationwide. The ripple effect of one 10-minute courtroom confrontation had fundamentally changed how America dealt with online fraud. 2 years after the viral moment, Judge Judy announced her retirement from television after an unprecedented career spanning 28 seasons. Her final episode was a cultural event. Celebrities, politicians, legal professionals, and everyday Americans tuned in to watch. She didn't do anything dramatic for her finale. She simply sat behind her bench one last time, looked into the camera, and spoke from the heart. "For nearly 3 decades, I've had the privilege of serving justice in this courtroom. I've seen the best and worst of humanity. But what I want you to remember is this: truth matters, expertise matters, and consequences matter. If you take nothing else from my show, take this: hold people accountable, especially those who claim authority they haven't earned. Protect the vulnerable. Stand up to bullies. And never, ever let someone get away with hurting others just because it's easier to look away." The studio audience gave her a standing ovation that lasted 5 full minutes. Tears flowed freely. Even her bailiff Petrie, who had stood by her side for decades, wiped his eyes. Judge Judy stepped down from the bench for the final time, waved to her audience, and walked off set into retirement. But her impact remained everywhere. Courthouses displayed her quotes. Legal aid organizations bore her name. And every single day, somewhere in America, someone thinking about scamming vulnerable people remembered what happened to Karen and thought better of it. Karen, now working as a custodian at that same community college where Jessica was studying, occasionally saw young people watching Judge Judy clips on their phones in the hallways. She would hear her own voice from years ago, so confident and so wrong, followed by Judge Judy's devastating takedown. The students would laugh and shake their heads. That woman was insane. Karen would lower her head and keep mopping, carrying the weight of her actions like chains she could never remove. She had become exactly what Judge Judy said she was: a cautionary tale, a warning, proof that arrogance without expertise leads only to destruction. 5 years after the confrontation, a documentary filmmaker interviewed both women for a special about the incident that changed consumer protection law. Judge Judy, now enjoying retirement, spoke with the same clarity and conviction. "I don't regret a single word I said to that woman. She needed to be stopped, and I'm glad I was in a position to do it." When asked if she had a message for Karen, Judy paused thoughtfully. "I hope she's learned that real expertise requires real work, real education, and real humility. And I hope she spends the rest of her life making amends." Karen, interviewed separately in her small apartment, could barely make eye contact with the camera. "Judge Judy was right about everything. I was a fraud and I hurt people. I'll never forgive myself." To my wonderful viewers, if this incredible story of justice and accountability moved you, don't just scroll away. Smash that like button right now to show Judge Judy some love for changing laws and protecting victims. Drop a comment and tell us, have you ever encountered a fake expert who tried to scam you? What happened? Your stories matter and we want to hear them. And most importantly, subscribe to Storytime with Green and become a member today to unlock exclusive behind-the-scenes content, early access to our most powerful stories, and bonus episodes about real people getting real justice. Hit that join button because here, every story delivers truth, every victim gets heard, and every viewer becomes part of something bigger. Thank you for watching, and remember, expertise matters, truth wins, and karma always comes around. See you in the next one.